Okay, so what we're going to do next, let's come back to Blackboard. And yeah, I have it here. I have another set of lecture slides on templated fields, right? So let me just get that up and going here. Just slideshow, change the monitor. Okay. So template fields, right? This is going to open up a lot more control for us. Basically, remember I showed you a moment ago in Visual Studio. Let me go back to Visual Studio. Right? When we look at, for example, the code for details view, grid view, whatever, okay? I pointed out a second ago that we just have this command field and we have bound fields, right? So the bound fields are powerful and they automatically switch when we're in edit mode, gives us a text box by default so we can edit information and so on and so forth. But great as they are, there's also limitations. As we talked about with this command field, I can't go in and write an event handler for an individual button in there, right? Fortunately, I was able to get around that in that case, but you know, there's severe restrictions on what we can do as a developer with these bound fields and command field controls. So that is kind of why we're going to focus on this. Okay, what we're going to be able to do is convert our bound field, command fields, and so on to templated controls. This gives us a way to look inside. It's like a microscope where we can go inside those controls and have full access to everything that happens inside each of those fields depending on the mode, right? It allows us to improve the user interface for things like foreign keys. Oh, we can actually start adding validation controls and even get in, add click events and modify behaviors of the different command buttons and so on, right? So obviously it's going to give us a lot more control over the situation than what we have using those bound fields and command fields and so on, right? So let's first of all talk about foreign keys maybe, okay? If we convert a bound field to a template field, then we can access what's used to display the information and all of its properties in each mode of our control, right? We don't actually have a foreign key yet in my team table, so I'm going to digress for a second. And let's do that. That'll be kind of an interesting exercise for us anyway. Let me just clean up the screen here a little bit. That's all fine so far. But if I go back to the database, now I know I ran a bunch of, oh, no, I just have the team in here. Okay, I think it was after I published this that I ran those scripts and created all those other dozens of other tables. But I just have my team table here now. So there's no foreign key, right? Let's suppose, though, that we wanted to have a typical lookup situation. So, I mean, a team is probably in a league, right? In a larger situation, we probably have a league, and then in each league, there'd be many teams. A team will be in one league, so it's a typical one-to-many relationship. So let me add another table. I'll try to do this fairly quickly. I don't think I have to break it down quite as much as I did the other day. Okay. So as I mentioned, for the name, I find the easiest thing is to go down and modify that in the create table statement itself. So I'll call it league, right? Create table league. And it will have an ID as a primary key. The only thing is I do want to come over here to identity specification, right? And change that to is identity true? Increment and seed can be 1 and 1. Those are the defaults. That's good, right? And then, you know, there's just the league name. League, well, I can just call it league. And it can be an nvarchar, 50 is fine. No nulls, thank you. I don't want to have any null league names. Okay, it doesn't make sense. And so that's it. That's really all I need to do. So I'll run the update. Come up here, it's preparing an update script. We saw it does a very complete and thorough job of writing the script for us, better than I could do. But I'll just click Update Database and it'll execute it. And now I should have in my Server Explorer, if I refresh the database. By the way, I should mention the other day somebody was doing some work in here and they just refreshed the one table. And even though they'd made changes to the table, it didn't show. They had to right-click the database and say refresh before they actually got it to work. Oh dear. Okay, Visual Studio found an error, restarted itself, and so here I am back. So I have my league and my teams, right? Actually, let's just go in. We'll manually in show table data. I'll add a couple of leagues, Remember, the IDs will be generated automatically, so I don't know, north, south, east, and west. Okay, so I've got 4 different leagues. By the way, I think I pointed this out the other day, but you see how when you're editing a row in here, you get the little pencil showing on the left? If you want to undo the most recent change to one cell, you can hit escape once. If you want to undo changes across an entire row, you just hit escape twice. Okay, so that, you know, if you're getting validation errors and things like that, that's a way to cancel it. Just clicking out of it, it's actually already executed the script to update the database. All right, so I have some leagues, and now I can go back to my team. Right, so if I go into open table definition, I'm going to have an issue, right? Because I plan on adding the foreign key here. But of course I have existing data, right? And if I don't allow null values for the foreign key, I won't be able to actually carry out my update. I'll show you that because we'll do it, okay? So I'll call it league ID. That's a good name for the foreign key. It's the name of the table that is the parent, right? It'll be an int, obviously not an identity because it has to actually have the related value. Allow nulls, no. Okay, so that's good enough for now, but I want it to be a foreign key. So what I can do is right-click foreign keys and say add new foreign key. Now to actually get that done though, right? See down here, to actually do it, I actually have to write some SQL. Good thing we know SQL. So down here it says constraint F key team the to table. The to table is league. Foreign key, the column is league ID. References, well, the to table again is league. And the column is ID, right? The primary key of the league table. Okay. So my constraint is, okay, named that foreign key. My column league ID references the league table, the primary key, the ID. All right, so I click update. And possible data issues. In fact, if I try to update the database, you see that it failed, right? It could not execute because I'm saying, wait, I'm not going to allow null values, but there's existing data. To get around that, I can leave this design open, go back over here. I could do it a couple ways. I can create a new query and just do delete from team and delete all the records. But to show you the interactive approach, if I show table data, I can actually select all the rows. Just I'm holding shift down, clicking, right? To click, select a range of rows. I just click on one, hold shift, click the other one. You can use control to turn on and off. Okay, like any standard selection. I can just press delete on the keyboard. You're about to delete 11 rows. Okay. The neat thing about this is, of course, everything I'm doing here is actually being done through creating SQL script and executing it against the database. But now I have no data left in my teams. Okay. So if I come back here once more to my design change, execute it again, it's warning me there's possible data issues. But if I do update database, now that I've emptied the data out, we successfully executed. So it has the foreign key constraint now, right? If I come back here, I still have my leagues. I haven't touched that, north, south, east, west. But if I show table data, I can now create some sample data. And notice, okay, I do have my new column here as well. Team name, Big Bears. And of course, if I try to put in something that doesn't exist, okay, no rows updated, okay, error message, the insert statement conflicted with the foreign key constraint. Oh, thank you, Mr. Database, for letting me know, right, that I don't have such a league ID. So I'll just come back here, change that to one of the ones that does work, and then it works, okay? Kind of boring team names. Get a couple in the same one. And so there's something alphabetically to show a little different. Okay, so I got a few teams just for some sample data. All right, so that was a lot of work, but now we actually have two, count them, two tables, okay, with a foreign key arrangement, so I can play about foreign keys. Okay, now let's run my data source configuration again. Remember what we said. I won't touch the update, insert, or delete commands because they work, right? As long as I don't take anything out of our select command, then all the values will be there that might be needed for parameters. But I can add additional data. So I can use even this query builder if I don't want to just write it all by, I can write SQL up in here. But using the query builder tool should look familiar, because it basically is the same tool you had as a query builder inside of SQL Server Management Studio. I can come up to the top, right click, add a table. There's my league table. And look at that. It has my little line. I can see right here, it's added the from clause with an inner join, league on team, league ID equals league ID. So it learned about my foreign key, figured out what the join would have to be, and has already done that for me, right? So I'm going to leave all the fields selected from team, but I'm also going to check off league. I'll click OK. There we go. So now I have my join, and I'm also in my projection showing the name of the league, right? I can add additional data to the select. As long as I don't change the action queries, all my insert, updates, and deletes will still work. But what I'm doing here, you kind of talked about this in the first half of the course of creating views that are useful for UI design. Adding extra information, including lookup values and so on, so they'd be readily available with the first request from the database without having to go back and get it again afterwards, right? So I have all the data in the actual team table, including the foreign key, plus I've included the lookup value, the names of the leagues as well. Okay. Now, for better or worse, right, I could say yes at this stage if I wanted to, okay? I haven't really done much other configuration inside these, so, you know, it's up to you. If you want to just manually add the extra column, I could have done it that way instead, but I let it update the controls. But you see it's wiped out all the customization on the actual fields themselves, right? Okay, so I can start with either one, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go to the grid first, go into edit columns, and again we'll take out the ID, don't need that. Team name, I'll just change the header text a little bit so it looks more professional. Rank, same thing. Now here I've got league ID and league. I could do either one, it doesn't matter, but I don't need both, right? What I'm going to use then is I'm going to use a template field. And I'm going to actually give a much better UI interface by using a template field than I would have otherwise. So the league ID, okay, I'll just take that one out and I'll show the league. Okay, so I'm going to enable editing and deleting, right? Okay, now if I were to run this though, we'd see the name of the league, but I couldn't actually edit it because what we need to edit is not the name of the league. We might want to pick that out of a list. What we really need to edit is the ID, right? That's the information stored in the team table, is that integer number, the ID of the league that the team belongs to. So in order to do that, I'm going to, for the first time, go into edit columns, select league, and right down here, you see this blue link. Convert this field into a template field, right? Okay, let's just go to the source of the page for a second. And just to contrast, see this is a bound field here for team rank, there's the one for team name. A moment ago, if I'd thought to show you, there would have been just an identical looking bound field for the league, right? But now instead I have all of this code. This is the template field. But notice I have a edit item template and a item template, right? So item template, that's for the read-only mode when we're just displaying the data. The edit item template, this is the one that's used when the grid is in edit mode. If I was in the details view, I'd also have an insert item template because the the details view can do inserting as well, right? But you see what I mean? Now I have full access and control of the label, text box, whatever controls are being used inside these different modes. I can, of course, work in the HTML of the page, but to continue on the way we've been doing it, I'll show you this neat tool that's built into the visual designer, right? So this, it doesn't look much different here, but we know it's now a template field. To interactively work with our templates, when I click the quick task list, at the very bottom here is edit templates. So this will bring up another dialog box that lets us kind of get access to the templates for all columns that are templated inside the grid control. So we'll select edit templates, and then now what we're seeing here is the template for league, the item template, right? But in the quick task, let me show you, we can zero in on, for example, the edit template. There's the text box. Okay, if I want the header template, okay, that's the template of what's in the head and so on. Or if I just go up here where it says column 3 league, then I get all the templates visible at once. So interactively then, I can actually work with the various elements inside each template. It's used in item mode, okay, alternating item, that's usually used for like changing just the background color, for alternating rows and things like that, edit item, and so on. All right. So this is good in that this label is bound, right? Now I can get into the actual data bindings of these controls because I templated it. So if I edit data bindings here, the label has a bindable property, the text property. And it's bound to, these are all the fields being returned by our select statement. So I want to bind it to the name of the league. And that's what we want. We want to display, we don't want to show 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We want to show the name of the league when we're in read-only or item mode. So this is already done and set for me. Okay, so I don't really need to worry about the item template. It's already doing what I want it to do. Problem is the edit template, right? I have to be able to edit, and it's bound right now to the same thing, right? The name of the league. Yeah, I can't change that, right? That's not in my update query for the team table, right? Nothing to do with it. I need to be able to change the league ID, right? I could do this. I could change it to league ID here and leave the text box there. Let's see what happens when I run it that way. I will actually be able to update now because I can change the league ID. So here in the grid, I see the labels are bound to the actual league name, okay, coming from my foreign key I included in the select. But when I click edit here, I don't have the name anymore, it's bound to the ID. Well, this is actually good because I couldn't have changed the name, but I could change this from 2 to 3, right? And update. Oh, and now I see that 3 was south. So we're halfway there, we're actually working. I can update it, right? But I have to remember those ID numbers, which is not a good design, okay? So what I really want is when I'm in edit mode, instead of having to type in a number for the league, the primary key value of the league, why not give them a drop-down list, right? Well, that's not so hard to do because I have, okay, ability to get into this template. I can delete the text box and instead put a drop-down list. So if I go to the toolbox in standard, here's drop-down list, double click, and there it is. I will bind it. Okay, binding is what actually the piece of information, the field you can change, right? So I'll bind the selected value to our league ID. Remember, that's what we need to modify is the integer. And two-way binding means it not only will, come from the database, but any changes will be sent back to the database as well. So that's good. Now I only have one problem left. I don't have a data source, something that returns the list of the names of the teams. Do you remember right near the end of the first half of the course, you talked about list style stored procedures? A couple people nodding. Okay. Remember, those are the ones it's a simple list, usually just 2 columns. Okay. One that would be like a unique identifier, often the primary key, and the other is maybe a concatenation of multiple fields, but whatever you would want to sort of display, right, about the thing. Well, again, we don't have stored procedures, but I can get around that. If I come up here, I can just add a new data source. Okay, go to the toolbox. Let's just go to the data section, and I can add another data source. Again, the ideal thing would be to actually have stored procedures, but since I don't, I'll just use the built-in SQL capabilities of my data source. So I'll give it a good ID. Okay, DS league list. Might as well use that word list at the end. It helps me identify that it's a list style data source. I will configure it. All right, well, I can just pick my existing sport connection string that's stored in my configuration file. That way, it's all pointing to the same configuration. You know, this is pretty straightforward. So I select which league I want. Okay, I want 2 columns, the ID and the name of the league. But remember, with those list style stored procedures, you want to make sure it's alphabetically sorted, right? So that any list, you know, you can type the first letter and it jumps down in the list to that letter and so on. So I want it sorted by the name of the league. Usually ascending, okay, it could be descending depending on your needs, right? So that's really just added, as we can see down here, just an order by clause to the select statement. Now, just to emphasize, no, we don't need insert, update, or delete. We aren't trying to change anything about leagues. We just need that darn list of what the leagues are, right? So don't need that, cancel that, just click next. I can test the query, make sure I'm getting data. And there we go. Alphabetically listed, okay, all of my leagues in the system, dynamically coming over. All right, so obviously that's going to be a dynamic data source, which is much better, right, than trying to hard code the values in the way we've used this before. Is you click edit items and you manually add items to your list item collection. Okay, that wouldn't be a good approach, because every time they change something in the database, you'd have to manually come in here and modify that code. Getting it from the database means you don't have to worry about it. Whatever changes are made in the database will immediately reflect in the user interface. So I can just now choose the data source. Okay, and we'll look, see, well, what data sources do I have? What's on the menu? Oh, look, DS league list, data source for the league list. Okay, select the data field to display. By the way, if you do this and you don't have any choices in these drop-down lists, right? I do, because I just ran. Okay, I tested the data source, so it actually is cached information coming from the data source already. But you just click the little refresh schema. So if you come into any of these dialog boxes, you don't see anything, right? Just click refresh schema. It'll just run the underlying query inside the data source. And then I would have these choices. So I can display the name of the league and store the ID, right? And that's it. Now it should actually work. Okay, so I'm seeing, because I bound this label in the item mode to the actual name of the team, but if I edit, yay, there we go. Now I have my alphabetically sorted list of leagues. So I can say, no, 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 no. The brown team is on the East League. Update, and away we go. That not work?
No.
Ah. Okay. I can tell you why, which is probably good to have something go wrong and show you why. In order to do any update command, okay, as a parameter, it has to have what? Whenever you write an update command, the where clause would have where the primary key value matches, right? So it's looking for the primary key. I took out the ID as a column, so it doesn't actually have that unless I tuck it away somewhere inside the control. and it was there, but because I refreshed everything after running the data source, I blew the controls properties away. I have to manually add it back in, right? So, oh, I'm still running. Yeah, that's why. Okay, maybe just before I do that, I'll show you. When you're in this special design mode, all you have to do is click the quick task and say end template editing. There we go. Now I'm back to seeing the grid view. I didn't actually need to do that, but I thought I'd show that to you. If I go back to the source here of the grid view, right up to the opening grid view tag, what we're missing here is data key name. Oh wait, there's data key names. Why didn't it work then? All right, grid view. I thought we were missing the data key names. Well, I'll tell you what, it's break time, so I will find out. All right, so we're back from break. I have to tell you, actually, it only took 5 seconds after I called break and I found my silly boo-boo. So I just want to emphasize before we get into the solution, though, that it wasn't just a matter of changing the foreign key. If I made any change anywhere, right, and went to update, it wouldn't actually work, see? It's not updating. The reason for that was not the data key names, right? The reason for that, I saw it as soon as I came into the data source. Look at the parameters. I don't have any parameters for the foreign key. So I forgot my always, 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 right? That's what I did. We added a new column to the actual table design. So when I configured DS Teams, right, I added stuff to the select statement, but I said don't touch the insert, update, and delete. That was a mistake, right? Because I have a new column itself in the team table, I have to regenerate my action queries, right? So what I'll do is I'll go back again, select the team table with all the columns, right? Click Advanced, and have it regenerate basically my insert, update, and delete statements, because it wasn't providing anything for updating the foreign key, which of course would fail, right? Test that. And there we go. So that's good. That's once. Not yet, no. Okay. Now I configure a second time. This time I can add back my foreign key to the select statement, right? So use my little query thing here, add the table, my league table, and basically all I have to do is check off that I'm also including the league. There we go, and that's my new select. But just to have a look here, so my update, insert, and delete, I fixed those last time through the configuration wizard, right, so that they actually do have the league ID and the league ID parameters. Okay, final test to make sure my select is working, and there we go. So that's it. I don't have to refresh anything in the grid view or details view. Okay, I just had to fix the SQL commands for the action queries in the data source. So now I should be able to run, and let's see if it works. Watch, egg on my face again maybe. Okay, so I'll change update, and there we go.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool.
All right, yeah, okay.
Everything is awesome.
Working. So, good lesson learned for all of us, including me, right? It was only because I'd actually added that new column in the table design. That's why I had to go through that whole procedure again, running the configuration twice, so I could update the action queries. Whew. Now, back to the PowerPoint. Where were we? We were here, okay? So we converted it to a template field, okay? We modified our select commands so that we got the lookup values so we could show them, okay? We added the drop-down list control, right? And we added a list style data source so we could populate the data, but we made sure that we're binding the drop-down list to the actual foreign key in the target table itself. And that's it. So that works, and it's a much better way to show a foreign key value. Now, oh, I should have shown you one more thing. I think I did the other day, but obviously if I don't put in required information or put the wrong kind of information in, we're going to get, right? Delete that. Okay, I closed my other browser, but okay, cannot insert a null value, right? So there's my friendly error message. Of course, the other thing is too, if I put garbage in here, input string in not in the correct format, okay? So we think, well, you know what? Wouldn't it be nice if we had validation controls? Yeah, we just learned about all those really neat things, required field validators and range validators, and so on and so forth. So it'd be great to actually have those here. But again, right now, the bound fields won't allow us to do that, right? There's no way to get in here to these bound fields and actually add something. So what we're going to do is template them as well, right? Come back in here one more time, edit columns, select the team name, convert that to a template field. The rank as well, right? Now when I go into edit templates, look at all this. I've got lots of columns to work with that are all templated. So I can go to team name, for example. And down here I see, okay, all the controls used in different modes. So in edit item mode, here's where I want to add my validation, right? So just get the toolbox and maybe pin it up here. I'll be using it a little bit. So I'll get down to the validation controls. All I need here is which validator to make sure something is entered. Required, right? So just add a required field validator right inside the template, okay? I'll set a few properties here of my required field validator. Okay, the error message, you cannot leave the name of the team blank, right? Of course, it wouldn't really do inside of a grid like this to actually have that whole error message showing up and shoving everything around. So here's a case where we almost certainly would want to give a nice simple text attribute, usually just a little star, right, the asterisk. I'm going to use a CSS class. I know I haven't made it yet, but I'm planning ahead. I'm going to call it DD Validator. So it will get that class to give it the red color that I'm after, rather than just hard coding the red in. Okay, we talked about planning ahead for the DD validator because I'm going to use that with dynamically generated validation controls as well. Okay, now as always, there's really the one key property here, control to validate, text box 1. Okay, how does it know that? Notice it's only looking. The scope here is just within this cell, this template, right? So there's only one text box in here. There it is, right? One thing you should be aware of is when you do have multiple validation controls on a page, they do have to have unique IDs everywhere on the page, right? So required field validator 1 might be okay, but you might want to start a bit of a naming convention. So this is required field validator 1, required field validator team name. If you want to shorten required field validator, feel free. It's up to you. RFV, I think that also works for others though. So anyway, so a unique ID is a good practice, right? Okay, so that's good for that one. Now let's go on to the next. So if I go into my templates here for the rank, I can leave this blank, right? It's not a required. The database says it allows nulls. But if we are putting something in here, okay, if I just type garbage, we don't want to get that input string not in the correct format message. What's our best choice of a validation for this? I think I mentioned when we first put the PowerPoint slide up about doing this team scenario that we would maybe want to limit the rank from 1 to 5, right? So what would be a good validation control to use here? So I make sure it's only an integer from 1 to 5. Looking at the validation controls, I've got compare, custom, range, required, regular expression, required. Everyone's shy today or what? Range validator, right? If I needed to both make sure something was entered and check what kind of something, I would use both a required and a range. But because it can be null, the range validator will do the job on its own, right? So again, an error message could be this is rank must be an integer from 1 to 5, right? So that way if they violate the data type or the actual numerical range, the same message will kind of cover both. Again, text, CSS class, DD validator. Control to validate is the text box that it sees. I don't care what the number is. And a couple more things with the range validator. Right? We have a minimum and maximum value. Minimum is 1, max is 5. And type. Right? Here's our data type checking. So if I select integer, okay, then only integers allowed. Right? So it does two jobs for me. It checks the data type of what's entered and the actual range it's in. If it's not happy about any of them, it'll give me my error. Now, once we start using these validation controls in here, obviously to get the actual full message, because all I'll get is a little star showing up, the full message could come from a validation summary. Maybe I'll just stick that down here. Validation summary. I will typically set the header text. Please fix the following. Right? Again, let it list in a bulleted list all the issues below it. Maybe I'll decide in this case I'm going to show the message box, set that to true, and show summary, set that to false. So it won't even appear on the page as a summary. Okay, it'll just use the message box to give the feedback to the user. All right. I'm missing a style sheet though, right? My DD validator. So if I right click up here, I could go through add new item. Add new item, right? Or look at that, it's right here in the list, style sheet. Okay, it's a fairly decent style sheet editor in here. Style sheet 1, style sheet, I don't know, demo style sheet, since it's my first demo. Okay, so really all I need to add is a class, DD validator, VATOR, right? And just color. So I have some nice IntelliSense and so on with this tool. There's actually a separate toolbar that shows up to help you write your CSS if you wanted to. Okay, so that's my style sheet. How do I get the style sheet applied to this page? Well, that's even so easy. I grab my demo style sheet, drag and drop it on the page. You see that? Drag, drop. Okay, where does it show up in the source code? Well, where all good links to the style sheets should be, up here in the head. So I'll automatically put it there for me. All right, so let's try this out, see what we've done by templating our additional data columns, right? And adding our validation controls in. So now when I click edit, okay, oh, there's a bit of an issue about the vertical arrangement here, but that's okay. We'll talk about that in a second. I can click update. There we go. Notice I have my little red star. You cannot leave the name of the team blank. Okay. As I fix it, the star will be gone. Let's put garbage in here. My star shows up there. You must fix the following. Rank must be an integer from 1 to 5. Oh, silly me. I'll put in 6 just to show you that the range actually works as well. It's still complaining, right? Same message because it's not between 1 and 5. And finally it was able to update. Okay, away we go. See, you relying on users to enter data properly is always a bad idea. But that's okay, we'll move on for now. Alright, so you see the value of the validation controls inside of our grid. Alright, let me bring up my PowerPoint again, because there's a couple things I was missing here. Right? So we usually set the text attribute to a star and use the summary to show the error message. Oh, here's that little tip. To help keep the vertical alignment, notice how by adding this into the templates, things were kind of messed up vertically. Things weren't lining up along the row. Here's a bit of a tip. This usually fixes it. Usually, because we are talking the web, right? Browser dependencies and all that. But usually, if you just set this attribute, it's just in the opening grid view tag, edit row style wrap to false. Then it won't let the star wrap down and show up underneath the text box and things like that, right? Okay. Then we'll talk about templating the actual commands themselves, but well, maybe I should do that first. Okay, go back to Visual Studio. So if I come to the grid itself, sometimes this is the quickest way. Come here, then I can click the grid, go back to the source. So here's the opening tag for the grid itself. Anywhere in here, I can set edit row style. Well, IntelliSense has helped me out. Wrap equals false. So that will prevent it from wrapping that way and should help solve that visual issue. Okay, now the template column, that's the only one left that we haven't, sorry, the command column is the only one left that we haven't templated yet. There's a number of reasons why we might want to do it. This is a kind of a common one. Right now when we click delete, it just happens instantly, right? There's no question. Instantly it's deleted out of the database and you go, crap, that was the wrong record. I didn't mean to delete that one. It was the one in the row above, right? So at the very least, it's kind of nice to give the chance for the user to say, are you sure you want to do this? Okay, cancel. So that is actually something we can do just by setting a simple property of the delete link that they're clicking, the link button. Wait a second, right? We just talked about the fact that with a command field, we don't have access to those buttons, right? They're generated dynamically, so the trick is once more template. By templating the command field or command column, right, now we'll have access to all the individual buttons in there, and we can change properties such as this Onclientclick property and so on, right? Plus, all the buttons in there, we can actually then add our own event handlers to them and things like that, and that'll come in handy later on. Okay, so in here then, go back into Edit Columns. See, they're all templates now except for the actual command field itself. I convert it to a template field. Now when I go into Edit Templates, I also have column 0 here. There's no name for it. It's my command column. And now I can get at all the actual buttons in here. So these are actual same kind as I created. They're link buttons. Okay, so here's the delete link button. I can come over here and there's a property right here called Onclientclick. So the idea is that this is a little bit of JavaScript that I can have it send down to the client browser and execute when they click this. So you remember some of your JavaScript commands? What does alert do? The alert command in JavaScript, what does it do for you? Yeah, it gives you a message box. You click OK and you're done, right? How about confirm? Do you remember from JavaScript, if you do a confirm, what do you get? It's like an alert, it's a message box, but you confirm OK or cancel, right? So that's what we're going to do is we're going to grab the return value. What did they click? OK or cancel. So it's return, get caps, return space, because it's the return value we want from a confirm, a JavaScript regular everyday confirm. So we're really just writing client-side JavaScript here. Confirm, are you sure you want to delete this, right? Question mark, quote, close the bracket, and a semicolon because we are doing JavaScript, right? Okay, so setting that Onclientclick will actually do the job of, if the client browser supports JavaScript at all, just confirming that they really want to do it. All right, but you know, while we're in here, remember we had this issue my link button, my button add new link, okay, it stayed on the screen, right? When I switched to the details view, okay, change the visible property, swapping out the grid in the details view. What I can do is I can Control X here to cut it out of the page, come down here, stick it in the header template of the command column. Okay, it's still going to work. Okay, it still has its event handler associated with it, right? Now let me just end template editing here to get this off the screen. When I run this now, two things. Now my add new is sitting in here inside the grid, right? Which is kind of nice because when I click it, it disappears too. Along with the, oh, I haven't fixed up my, I haven't done any work fixing this up yet, but we will. And I don't even have a button to click. Arrgh. So much for that demo. I can click the back button though. Anyway, so the add new is there, but also if I just click delete now, oh, are you sure you want to delete this? Okay, cancel. If I cancel, then I don't. If I say okay, then it's gone, right? So that was all achieved by, again, templating the command call, right? Obviously, I need to work on my details view. I've added all this great stuff, my validation inside the templates for my team rank, okay, and team name and so on. My foreign key value here. I need to repeat all that good customization work in the details view itself. Fortunately, because I'm only using the details view for inserting, I don't have to worry about every template. But if I come here, edit fields, a few things again, take out the ID, just fix up the header here, the caption. This basic work I always do first. This time, remember last time I started with the league, with the foreign key name, right? Just to show you the difference, this time I'll take that one out, blow that column away, and I'll modify this one. Okay? So we're going to make each and every one of these a template. So we can add our validation in. So I can modify the foreign key. One thing I forgot to do is I forgot to check off enable inserting. Right? That's why I didn't have a command. Right? So I'll template that as well. Okay. So now I can edit templates. Let's start with our foreign key, the league ID. Right? So the only thing I have to worry about is the actual insert, the insert item template. That's the only one I'm concerned about because I'll never see this control in any other mode but insert mode. Right? That's the only way we're using the details view in this case. So I'll just blow away the text box. We don't need it. Bang, delete, it's gone. We'll come back to the standard tools. I'll throw in instead my drop-down list. Okay. I'll make sure it is bound to the league ID. That's the actual foreign key, the integer value I need to change in the team table, right? But for a data source, I can go back to my league list data source, displaying the league name, using the ID as the internal value of each selected item, right? That relates, of course, back to my data binding because it's the selected value I'm binding to the league ID field in the team table. That's how it gets it from A, hands it off to B, right? Okay, so that's good for the foreign key. Now I just have to do my validation in the team name. So because it's only the insert item template I have to worry about, I might want to just focus on that. Here's where I'm going to add the validation control. Again, a required field validator. Error message. Oh, here's my CSS class. Notice that now I've added the CSS style sheet. It does give me a list of classes to choose from, right? Okay, error message. Basically, I could have copied and pasted the required field validator I had already, but just trying to be a little different. Okay. My star. Control to validate. Text box 1. Now, I mentioned before, right, because I changed the name of the other, I would get away with this being required field validator 1 because I already removed that or modified the name of the first time I did that. But, you know, it's a good practice to give it a meaningful ID because we have so many on the page, and if you have two of the same, you'll get an error, right? Because it doesn't automatically sense and see why I already have one. So actually, you know, I think the numbering will automatically take care of it. It's just that I think it's a good practice to name them in this case. So this would be my details team name. Something like that. As opposed to the grid view team name. Alright. Last but not least, we'll fix up the rank insert item template, throwing in our range validator. This is kind of very repetitive, I know, so I'll do it quickly. Rank is a number between 1 and 5. Throw that star in there. See, I did call it range validator 2 because I forgot to rename the range validator in the grid. So yeah, if you let it number them automatically, if you add them this way, the only time I guess I usually get in trouble is if I copy and paste because I'm too lazy to change all the properties, right? But control to validate, text box 2. Again, minimum is 1, max is 5. And the type, not a string, but a integer. Alright, so that'll do. Close enough. I'll end template editing. So now we should have a fully functional web page with all our validation, both when we insert, if I click add new, right? If I click insert, okay, can't leave the name empty. Funfair. Rank, I can leave that empty, so I'll put some garbage in. Okay, and then I get my validator there. And we are back to our grid. So now we fix up both, but you see the usefulness of templating, right? We can get in there, we can control the actual events of the command buttons, add new commands inside the command column. We can actually add validation controls, change what controls are used if we want a drop-down list or a radio button list or something like that instead of a text box, right? So you'll find that you often end up templating almost every column anyway. But it works. Any questions about that? All right.